Winston Link's work is quite profound when you consider what he was doing. So let's just talk about his technique. No one was doing what he was doing at that time. He was taking these massive flash bulbs, and he was doing a lot of photography at night that gave him the ability to control the light and capture exactly what he wanted to capture and not capture what he didn't want to capture. So that was one of his biggest contributions to photography and to railroading. Ultimately Norfolk and Western, because they were one of the last major steam haulers.
Pretty much, they're like a living, breathing machine. There's nothing that the human race has ever built or invented that is anything like a steam locomotive. I mean, you go to fire them up, and it's like they're talking to you.
There's no other machine that has the idiosyncrasies that a steam engine does and can do what a steam engine does. I mean, they just sit there and they're quiet, but the instant you put the engine in full forward and open the throttle wide open, you have all the power. And it goes from just sitting there peacefully doing nothing to becoming a living animal, and it's just, there's nothing else like it.
Winston was an incredible character. I mean, it's hard to describe. It was just his style.
Now, Winston studied to be an engineer. As an engineer, he learned a lot of skills in how to deal and process information. He remained a dramatist, and I think this is very important, particularly, and was reinforced working as a photographer for Carl Bayer, which was a PR firm. Of course, this is the late 30s, and as I've said, there were few jobs available. So this really gave him a chance to exercise his dramatic sensibilities, to make odd photographs.
So he was traveling out throughout Louisiana and heading back up to New York as part of his work. And so he really loved trains in all aspects and all varieties. When he was doing his commercial photography, I can't remember what project he was working on specifically, but he ended up in Stanton, Virginia in 1955. And that was what started the NNW project. Just this iconic image of the operator in there on a 1920s phone. Everything seemed to be antiques. And he kind of fell in love with it and decided he needed to document this, because steam trains were phasing out of the United States, and Roanoke and the Norfolk and Western line specifically still held on to theirs. They were still continuing to make their steam trains until 1957. So 1960 is when it all really ended, and he felt this was a much bigger project that he needed to document and get the word out later. So with the help of the railroad, he did document and go around into all the different localities to capture the steam train in its glory.
The night photographs are so different, and they are so unusual. And no one has ever done it because, for one reason, no one was going to spend the money. Winston had already spent money to develop the format and the style, and he went and spent more money to get larger reflectors. One held 18 bulbs, and others, he had them custom made. And it was just like an extension of his work that he did for other people, but this he was doing for himself. And this, I think, is what makes him an artist. He had the vision. He knew how he could put the work, the ideas that other people had said, do this, do that, and Winston could meld it all together in the idea of preserving a time and preserving it with a unique vision.
Yeah, I mean, there's a technical advantage to shooting at night, which is that you can choose where the lights go. So you get to decide as an artist what you want in the frame and how it'll be lit, and how it gets lit, I think really changes the viewer's opinion about what's going on.
And when you look at many of his photographs, you think, well, it could have been lighted that way, I guess. No, it was pitch dark. And it was black until he pressed the button on his power supply that fired up to 60 flash bulbs and fired the electric shutters on 3 4x5 cameras.
So Winston Link would go and scope out areas that he wanted to photograph the trains coming through. So what he would do is he'd go during the day. He had an assistant with him, and so he would go during the day to scope out the location that he wanted to photograph, set everything up. He had miles and miles of cables, several large flash units with single-use bulbs in each. And he would set everything up. A lot of times they would be difficult setups where he'd have to go on the roof of the depot, or if he would have to tightrope across the river to get a particular shot. Everything he did was documented in notebooks. So we have exactly how he positioned all of the light fixtures and what he wanted to do to highlight certain aspects of an image. So with Hotshot Eastbound, for example, he set up several along the train, along the railroad line, so he could capture the train itself, but then also several along the individuals in the cars. That way he could get a broader aspect of what he wanted in the image. So it wasn't just about the train, it was about what was in the foreground too.
The last time I came here, this was all grown up and you couldn't really shoot from here. This actually looks pretty awesome. So I'm just gonna see what we could do here. Really, these telephone poles are our natural enemy. We don't want them in the shot. Railroad gave us this nice elevated position here. This is pretty good. Oh man. The amount of distance between this thing here, like the mill, and the thing that's lined up with it up on the track, the front of the train, there's a huge amount of difference when you shoot looking down like that. So here we have two tracks. We really want to know which track the train is going to be on, because if we put it on if we light for the wrong track, the train could be like 200 feet. It's hard to believe how much difference just the 10 feet across when you're shooting at a hard angle like that, how much further the train could be back if you get it on the wrong track. So we'll guess they'll come up the right-hand side. We'll go from there.
Yeah, I love Link's images, just the way that people interacted with each other. I don't think some of the instances the people were posed, others they were not. They just happened to be at the right place in the right time, waiting for the train. Like with Maud, they were waiting for the train to pass so they could go across to the other side. People on their bikes, again, waiting for the train to pass. I just love the aspect of people are doing things in their regular daily lives, and that's what he's capturing. Not only did Link capture the people who were riding the trains, but he got to capture the people who were working on them. So the switchers, the bank operators. I think he thought it was important to capture, the scale of these locomotives, what needed to happen to not only build them but to maintain them. Taking photographs of the interior of the roundhouses, washing the locomotive, just all the aspects that it took to maintain them. That they were not just these, phrase would be, they didn't just, appear by themselves, and they had a whole group of people working on them to keep them going.
But this is locomotive number 475. This is the engine that is in service this week for our regularly scheduled passenger trains. So every morning we hostle the engine, and Mr. Miranda here, Gabe Miranda, he is our fireman of record today, and he's also the hostler of record today. So what he's doing is he's hostling the engine. Throughout the day, if you guys watch the crews, every once in a while they'll check the journals on the tenders, they'll be touching the axles and the crank pins, and they're checking for hot bearings. That's what they're doing. Because you have to remember, these steam locomotives, you're the computer. The engine crew is the computer. They're the ones who are doing all the work. They're the ones who are feeling everything. They're listening to the sounds, the smells, the vibrations, the noises, everything. All your senses are tapped in determining the condition of your engine and how to properly run your engine and to diagnose any possible issues. So that's what's going on with this.
when I think about when he was shooting, you had the steam engine was nearly on the way out, but like jet travel for civilians was coming in, and you just think about like these two technologies existing. It wasn't that much longer before satellites were out and going back the other way. So he went out and he saw this railroad that hauled coal. So they were really stuck with the steam trains because that's their business, hauling coal and steam. So that stuck around for a little bit longer than maybe you would have thought, and it gave him this opportunity to go out and document a whole slice of America, almost in the way that some of the WPA stuff had done, a couple decades earlier. And I think that's really amazing that just some guy decided to go out and document all this in that way. It's really amazing. All right, I got my camera remote set up here because it's really hard to see in the dark where the train is coming at you. So we're gonna stand on this light close at the nose of the camera, or the nose of the train. It rolls up, everything goes off. So that's the plan. We've been here, I don't know, 4.5 hours, 5 hours.
It happened.
I am freezing standing next to that thing. All that wind.
Oh, man. All right, so after how long?
Let's see. Let's check the time here. It's 9:30. It's 15 minutes more than you said we were out of here. That's a fair move. So we've been here since 5:30. What is that? Four whole hours. And the train came through. That was a monster train. It was moving pretty fast. So we took it from the other side with all the lights. That's where we've been hanging out, and that's where we need to be so we can actually take the picture when the train is at the right place in front of the lights. Looking in here, all you see is a bright ball coming down the tracks. You got no idea what's going on. So anyway, we haven't checked it out. Let's see it. It's a little dark. Let me just see if two went off. Yeah, two went off. So there we go. Let me get in there. Oh, look at all that. Look at all that fog. Just like what we like to see.
Nice.
I'm happy.
There it is. That looks so good. All right. Finally, we can cap it off for the night.
Yeah. All right.
So, ultimately, how 475 ended up here was a wonderful twist of fate. And I'm going to tell you that story, or a little bit of the details of that. So, here's the ultimately timeline of that. In 1962, 475 was sold to the Virginia Scrap Iron and Metal Company in Roanoke. So it was ultimately supposed to be scrapped, but that company took their time. They were in no hurry of scrapping that engine. In fact, they had a couple other M-Class engines at that time. They didn't stay there for very long. Lynn and a few guys, including Rick Musser, I believe Carl Playstead too, they went to go check the engine out. They thought, hey, this engine's in good shape. You know, it's got some problems, but we could work on it. Let's get it. So they made a deal with Boone Scenic. Boone Scenic eventually sold it to them for $100,000. Unfortunately for 475 never got to get a glamour shot from Mr. Link because Mr. Link focused on the Abington branch. But he had a love for the M-Class engines, in particular 382. Every once in a while, several years ago, we did a photo charter replicating 475 to make it look like 382. And this was an engine that Winston Link felt near and dear to his heart. And he had quite a few audio footage that he captured of a lot of audio recordings that he caught of that engine. and some of the other engines at the Abington branch. Unfortunately, nothing directly related to 475. However, his ability to capture the M-class engine in service allows us to experience that to this very day and capture some of that and try and replicate some of that to this very day. One of the beautiful things about the Strasburg Railroad is that parts of our branch line look very much like the Abington branch. So you wouldn't know that you weren't at the Abington branch from some of the parts of our line. It fits right into the scenery. So we are able to capture to this day what it looked like back in those days, and quite literally bring Winston Link to life in this very day, and those images to life in this very day. And that's what I find the direct connection between this engine and Winston Link. Once he's satisfied that most of the water's been evacuated, he cuts the drain. So now, he can pump it in into the main reservoir. Keep all the fly ash from, or at least to minimize the fly ash from going into the air, going on the paint, and going into the bearing. So that's why we like to use water. Water helps alleviate most of that fly ash and keeps it settled down. Once that's all cleaned out, then we'll drop the blue flag right there, and we'll head on back to the blow down pad, at which time we will blow the engine down.